Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to episode number 81 of Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. 11:11. How many signs still shine in your eyes? Synchronistic, starlit flashpoints. 11:11. Mirrors and portals. But all the sevens hold power somewhere. Safe haven. 1:1. 11:11. Reflect your ascension in spite of the woes of this world. 11:11. The great affirmation, pure source inspiration, the yolk of, the egg of, the split. 11:11. Divided in portions. 11:11. Sand slips through the fingers of time. 1 into 2. Oh, what to do? It's all just a test so divine. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and it is Monday, 11/11/19, just a couple months away now from the triumphant return of the Roaring Twenties, a new evolution. That's certainly something to be hyped up about, and we will be here live for the next hour tonight, and I'll be joined in the next segment by tonight's guest, Peter Roets. He'll be coming on to talk about the latest album from his band Spectralux, and he has several new tracks to debut that he's going to give us some insight on. Peter was on the program around this same time last year, so I'm looking forward to hearing what he and the band have been up to since then. That conversation will be coming up shortly. I do encourage listeners to please take a moment and subscribe to the 17 Numa Radio channel. It's easy to do and it's free. All ye have to do is click the follow button found on the page where this episode is streaming, and that'll get you signed up. A reminder to everyone that all past episodes of Songs of Selah can be accessed or downloaded for later listening from the archive here on the channel or from the Songs of Selah page at 17numa.com. Be sure to check out some of the recent episodes featuring interviews with some wonderful guests when you're in the mood, including last night's edition that featured president of the Atlanta Writers Club and author George Weinstein, who was on to talk about his new book, Watch What You Say. So thank you to George for appearing on that program. And big thank you to everyone who spreads the word about the show and shares episode links. Your support is greatly appreciated. Sometimes we run on fumes, and sometimes the tank is full. But in either scenario, the key factor of ignition is the constant intention of continuation, flowing and fluxing with the ever-changing tide of the Tao River. That used to be my motto, and I guess it damn well still is, because I never met a quantum leap that wasn't predicated on all the small steps taken along the way toward the eventual jump point. And the goalposts of life are always shifting and moving further out in the distance, because once one goal is achieved, there is always a new one manifested to take its place. It's a natural law of perpetual motion, seeking the ineffable, chasing the tail of Ouroboros, reaching toward the transcendent, grasping each new hold revealed while climbing the mountain. And on that theme of Ouroboros, I thought I'd kick tonight's episode off with a poem appropriately titled Alms of Ouroboros. Those politics will eat you for breakfast and leave the empty plate smeared with grease. That's not God in your needle. That's not love in your message. That's not virtue in your stained glass. That's not power in your eyes. I can see you the same way I can see straight through myself. Just another tale chasing itself around the cycle we have suffered and survived before. Mounds of dirt, vials of blood, bones and ash piled atop the earth. Anthills, molehills, kingdoms, fiefdoms, empires are all, sooner or later, kissed by their own sacrifices and smashed by the hands of time. That's not gold in your teeth. That's not love in your mission. That's not honor in your oil fields. This is not your reaping of wheat. So that was Alms of Ouroboros, an excerpt from my most recent book of Sand and Sugar, copies of which are available through Cyberwit Press, or if interested, you can pick up a copy directly from me. And that'll just about wrap things up here at the top. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to hear several new tracks from the band Spectralux here tonight. Let's go to the first one of those right now, and then we'll be back on the other side to talk more about it with tonight's guest, Peter Roets. This is Electrify the Sky. Enjoy.
Erase history, become the wind. Awaken the earth, return to begin. Electronic screens, hypnotic states. A mind is crystalline or human waste. 1,000 streets, 1,000 dreams. The heartbeat of an endless wave. 1,000,000 brains lost in space, staring at the void of a nameless face. They can erase our humanity. Let's electrify the sky and chase the sun away, away. Gas for air, silent ears. Electronic screens stealing tears. This day and age, acid rain, bending minds your whole life. Electronic screens, hypnotic states. A mind is crystalline or human waste. 1,000,000 brains lost in space, staring at the void of a nameless face, nameless face. They can erase our humanity. Let's electrify the sky and chase the sun away, away. They can erase our humanity. Let's electrify the sky and chase the sun away, away. Are you leaving?
welcome back to Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. If there's anyone interested in appearing as a guest on a future episode, feel free to contact me at 17numa@gmail.com or get in touch on any of the social media platforms. Facebook is probably the best bet, and I'd be more than happy to get you set up for an episode early in the new year ahead. Tonight's episode features the band Spectralux, formed in 1999 against the grain of a burgeoning U.S. alternative music scene. Spectralux has stood the test of time. Evolving like Beck or David Bowie, the band stands poised to embark on new endeavors in 2019 and beyond. The current songs and their lyrical content reflect today's liquid culture, and that was one of their new tracks, Electrify the Sky. So we're joined now by the band's founder, Peter Roets. How you doing today, Peter?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, my friend. So
Good.
Been a while since you've been on the...
Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, man, been a while since we talked, but you were on the program last year, so I wanted to catch up and see how things have been going with you and the band here in 2019.
Going great. In the studio currently, finishing up some songs and working on getting the live show together. Some show dates possibly in Brooklyn and Miami. Nothing scheduled for Atlanta, but it's taken a transition, the live show, from 5-6 guys on stage to basically just me and backing vocals and a utility player. And I think that's kind of the sign of the times, where things, are kind of condensed down with technology. So we used to record we used to rehearse in studios actually next to Mastodon, which was hard to do, believe it or not. And it's gone down to just basically myself in the studio, and the guys come in and play their parts. That song essentially is about the modern times we're living in, where we seem to be not human anymore, but more of an algorithm,
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's like a beat and a vocal, and we add synth and guitar. Hemingway said the world breaks everyone. And afterward, some are strong at the broken place. So, Atlanta has kind of beat us down as far as the band itself. It hasn't been a very nurturing music scene. I think possibly it's more geared towards rap and hip-hop. But, so that's what that track is about. You pull up to a traffic light, and it's green, and a girl walks through. She's staring at her phone, and you almost hit her because she's just staring at the void of a nameless space, like the song says. And so that's really what that track is about, just our current culture.
Yeah, absolutely. The social media culture and everyone tapped into their devices at all times, swerving around in their cars. So,
and essentially that's what that track is about. Electrify the Sky is where we rise up beyond that, and we look beyond ourselves and looking towards the future, where it doesn't take light bulbs to electrify the sky, to turn the lights on, and I think that's coming. It just takes the energy from some other source, and with Tesla, it's funny because I was really reading a book about Tesla not too long ago, and he died penniless in his apartment. He didn't even own a home, and now we're naming cars after the guy. So it's fascinating that he really had a grasp on the future. Nikola Tesla, and beyond, you know, his predecessors, and they just wanted to make money. So I think that Electrify the Sky is really just about that. It's about let's all join together and try to make a difference, as opposed to, you know, one person trying to capitalize on anything. And so it seems like, and that doesn't have to be socialist. It could be, you know, I mean, I understand we live in a capitalist world, but we need to help each other at this point. I think it's evolved beyond that. I mean, really, there should be another party other than that divides us, something else. And I think that's coming. I just don't think I don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime, unfortunately.
Well, there are definitely
the
other parties out there already, the Libertarian and the Green Party, and those, they just don't get the
I think
media
there's one
coverage.
beyond that. I think there's one that's like going to join everybody together. But my mother always told me, she said that you're ahead of your time, and it's sad. And she's like my father was by the way, for the veterans, any veterans listening, happy Veterans Day. Thank you. I come from a line of veterans, and my parents are very conservative. And my mother always said, though, and my father more recently, you're ahead of your time, son. Sorry that you're born now, but you know, hopefully I can instill some of those values in friends or family that I don't have now, but I'll maybe have in the future. So.
Definitely a admirable cause to look toward, and I think in certain spots throughout the country and throughout the world, really, there are these communities rising up with the organic farming and the
oh yeah, totally
different sort of communal, tribal type of feeling to them, and it's almost like this huge dead tree that's up above us right now that's still blocking the sun from coming in, but underneath are all these smaller pieces of shrubbery that are trying their best to take over, and it just has to wait until that tree falls over, and then all the nutrients and the sunlight.
That's until the tree's life. The tree's life has to live its course, and organically, it seems like that's the best resolution to, you know, I know a couple of I'm responsible for about 5 marriages, 4 of which are very successful. Meaning, organically, I introduced the guy to the girl, and you know, and I one of them is Peter, the other guy that was on last time, my bandmate. I introduced him to his wife, and you know, they're prospering, and it's like it's an organic thing. When you try to force it, and the problem is we've got it's technology versus man now. And so, you know, you're fighting against technology. And it's funny because all the dating sites, you've got, you know, this algorithm set up, and it may not even match you with the appropriate person. It's all based on what you enter in the computer system. So you may not even meet the right person because of the fact that you didn't enter the right, maybe you clicked, you know, occasionally drinks, and the person drinks a little heavier, and then they're not seen on your screen. So the organic nature of life will go on, and eventually we'll continue to prosper as a culture. I mean, that's the positive nature always, the good, I believe, always wins over the evil. But you know, yeah, that's what that track is about, too, without saying too much.
Well, there's definitely a matter of evolution and adaptation that's still in the process of taking place, because the technology went so quickly and started to become exponential at a certain point. And so the consciousness of society itself is still catching up, I think, to where the technology went all these light years ahead almost.
It's
So
funny
we're
because
sort of in that balancing act.
Yeah, we are. It's a liquid, and that's funny. It's like 10 years ago I put out a record. It's called In Your Collective Conscience, and that was what that was about. And that was before the current presidency, before all the stuff. I just saw that there was post 9/11 going to be conflicts of interest between individuals. I don't know how, but that's just something that I've always been kind of like foreshadowing. I could almost see in my mind. And on that record, there's a lot of that, a lot of talk about that. On our first record that we ever did, which was on Reel to Reel, called Maison Garde, with Henry Watts and Nate Fackler, we actually recorded it down to a tape. I was like, in the lyrical content, some of it's like, America is a child ready for the taking, is one of the lyrics on one of the songs, and it's like, that was pre 9/11. We were just at such a point in our culture that something needed to break. And I feel like we're at the same point now, but we're more divided instead of together. So something has to happen in order for like a catalyst for change. If you meet a drunk and he gets into a car wreck and harms someone and, faces the legal consequences of that, he decides in his mind organically, look, maybe I shouldn't be drinking anymore. And so I think culturally, metaphorically speaking, that has to happen with our culture, and it's not the forest fires in California, or it's not, these smaller events that have occurred. But after 9/11 occurred, and I'm talking about this because it's Veterans Day, we banded together. We became one as a culture all of a sudden because of this cataclysmic event. And I think something like that would really catapult us into more of a stable social climate.
Would definitely hope so, going through the consequences of things right now. And as you said, an individual has to suffer those themselves sometimes to see the bigger picture. And as a culture and society, that's basically what we're going through at this point as well. And it's just important on the idea of technology and social media and these things for us to get out into the world, to deplug from that at least at some point every day.
I just saw Instagram is they're removing the likes button they're removing likes. So you can't like the post. People just post photographs. And you can comment on it, but they're going to remove. They've started it on a small scale, but eventually it'll, pervade, I think. And so it's like, instead of getting likes, you'll get comments.
Yeah, and that leads to a more open conversation, draws people closer together instead of just chasing after the dopamine fix. I read that article you're talking about as well. They're still in those beta test of it right now. And there's another article about Silicon Valley, where a lot of the people there are going on like extended fast from everything that dopamine produces. So whether it's social media,
it's crazy. It's crazy. But that track, Chris Sampson and I pretty much wrote that track together, and I think Peter Norman added some textures to it. But, as you'll see with the other songs, Pure Light, which is coming up, that track really was written in about 10 minutes. So talking about the music, some of the songs are more gestational, where they take on, lives of their own, and then some are just written really quickly. There's a track called, I'm trying to remember the name of, we've got such a vast catalog that some tracks are written really instantaneously with the producer. Like he'll be like, let me play this, and I'll play something, and then we're just like, okay, this is a song. And then other songs take weeks or months to kind of sit. They're like gestational, and then you come back to them, and you're like, oh, wow, let's go back to that. And then the whole band comes in, and I like those tracks myself. It's like Phil Spector, The Wall of Sound, where you've got, all these little nuances in the song versus the instantaneous songs. I mean, sometimes they're a little bit more linear.
Well, let's check out the track that you're talking about right now, Pure Light, and then we'll come back on the other side.
Yeah, Chris and I wrote that.
More about it.
Chris and I wrote that in about. Chris Sampson, greatest producer. He produces the B-52s now. I was in a studio with him probably 10 years ago, called Nickel and Dime in Avondale Estates, where Peter Norman lives now. And we were in a studio, and I found the checkbook. I don't know if I told this story, for the B-52s. And we met them, and they were in the studio at the same time as us. And Train recorded there, and another band called TLC, which used to be a female rap group from Atlanta. Anyway, yeah, Pure Light. It's a pretty good track, but it's new. So here it is.
All right, cool. We'll be back on the other side with more from Peter Roets.
Standing here on earth, beyond the realm of normalcy, in a 5,000 millisecond daydream, where the food is perishable, the life unremarkable, revolving doors, sitting for another revolution of the traffic light, wondering if that's just like my life. People come and go, some green, some red, some yellow. Suck the last crumb, I'm floating numb. Pure light is blinding, away out. Pure light is blinding, away out. Embrace your face, this viral flavor's lost. Inside this virtual generation you'll find a plum we're waiting to ripen. They consume it down to the core. Wild is my favorite color as I long for that idyllic life. I realize a lot of snow has already fallen over the footprints of our love. Pure light is blinding, away out. Pure light is blinding, away out. Pure light is blinding, away out. Pure light is
All right.
All right, that was Pure Light from Spectre Lux, and we're joined by Peter Roets, the band's founding member. So you guys have been around now for 20 years, since 1999.
No, it's crazy. We played up the East Coast, New York City. I remember we were doing a tour in support of a recording. I think it was In Your Collective Conscience, and we were at this place in the East Village, off 2nd Avenue, called the Lit Lounge, and you had to load down your gear. It was like going into a dungeon, it was probably like 300 feet. You had to carry your gear down into the basement. And we played this show, and there's some photos online somewhere, and maybe a live recording of it. And I remember the sound girl was extremely hot. She was like, let's hang out.
That's one of the perks of being in a band, I suppose.
and so we hung out. The band was staying at a venue. We used to have a booker, and she always put us in these Embassy Suites hotels. And so we were at the Embassy Suites across from the East River in New York City, and it was 50 floors up. And there was 100 floors. And if you looked over the rail, you could see 50 floors down. And that night was crazy because I said, I'm going to hang out with this girl. So I went off with her, and the band went back to the room. And the girl, we hung out and went to a couple bars, and then essentially she went on her way, and she said, I have band practice. I said, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. She said, well, I'm a musician too. I have band practice. So I went back to the hotel, and the funniest thing was Jeff Cobb, our guitar player, was sleeping in the bathtub. He had a blanket. He had put something underneath him to cushion the bathtub. I mean, we're talking a small room, which is probably $200 a night at the time. And, we played the next night in Atlanta at the Earl. And I remember I caught strep throat. It was probably from making out with the girl in New York, because New York is so fast. But we fit in great there. We had the place was packed off 2nd Avenue, Lit Lounge. I don't know if it's still there. And I've seen it in movies since, the same location area. And, they loved the band there in New York when we played there a couple times, and they loved it. And Atlanta hasn't been as receptive. I think I mentioned that before. But Pure Light was written in about 10 minutes. The ending, which you didn't play, it just goes off on this crazy musical, like electronic kind of jaunt. But, some of the songs, like I said, are written, overnight, and then some of them take a long time. Tears in the Rearview Mirror, which you're going to play, was like kind of like a longer process. And I feel like the songs that people really like at our shows are the ones that have been taken longer and are like, not written really quickly.
What's the process when you're putting together a song, whether it's capturing that snapshot in time in the moment or whether it's coming back from a different perspective later on? Are you writing the music first or the lyrics first, or is it a combination?
Well,
of
it
the two?
depends. It's all over the place. That's what's crazy, is it's all over the place. Some of them are written on the spot. Like, I go in the studio to work on one song, and the producer, Chris Sampson, says, hey, I got this track. Check this out. And I'm like, okay. And I listen to it, and I'm like, I've got lyrics for that right now. And then he's already recorded the guitars and, and everything. Tears in the Rearview Mirror was one of these songs where, I brought a flute player in. I hired a guitar player. Samson, the producer, also played guitar. I think Peter Norman played guitar. So they all came in, and it was like a group effort, kind of a longer. And that song is we're still wondering if we should cut it back, because I was at a show at the Star Bar, and this girl came out and played the flute, and it was a band called Ultra Baby Fat. Michelle
Did you get her
Dubois. she's like a local musician. She had the flute player, and I was like, that flute player is amazing. I want her on this track. And so we got her, and I paid her to come in and record flute, and she played along, and I did vocals along with the guitar. So it all depends. It definitely has changed. The organic process is not as fluid because I bring everybody in the studio now, as opposed to we used to own a practice space and we paid, $400 a month to practice there. And that isn't necessary anymore because technology has just sped up so much that you can, make things happen quicker.
And where are you at in the process of the next album at this point?
I'm currently working on 2 singles in the studio now. I've brought in I'm talking to a guy from Butch Walker's crew about doing a guitar lick, and then Chris has worked on some of the music. So we're about halfway through this new record. It should be out in 2020. The last record, which was See the Colors That You've Ignored Forever, which I think we were working on last time we talked, that album, we got the rights to Caroline Gray's artwork, and her father was a famous Dutch painter, and she's pretty big. So we got the artwork for the cover, which you put on the blog website, that she actually hand drew all of the artwork. And that piece is probably the size of, it's like huge. But we brought it down to like album cover size. But yeah, she Caroline Gaze is her name, Geys, and she is phenomenal. She has her own studio in LA and is a pretty big artist. So I like the thought of being able to still work with artists like Buffalo Jump. We worked with Sharon Shapiro with the cover art. I know a lot of artists just put like a picture of a couch, on their cover. But we're still doing the organic thing,
Well, it's always cool to be able to collaborate with artists from other genres and bring it all together. Gives a wider feel, more eclectic feel to the overall project, and it's definitely a cool cover art that you have on that last album. And you were talking about the Tears in the Rearview Mirror track a minute ago, so let's go to that one now and hear what you were talking about. We'll be back on the other side.
Thank you, sir.
Shifted my way through this
year.
All right, that was Tears in the Rearview Mirror by Spectra Lux, and we're here with Peter Roets. So
Yeah, you heard all the flute parts. Yeah.
yeah.
The girl was she's like she works with the ASO, Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and she's like this like world-renowned flute player. So it's cool. I like it. It may be cut back. Our new record, I gotta say, the new songs are a little more upbeat. It's kind of been the last 10 years have been kind of more, I guess you could say, the recordings are more, shoegaze-ish, kind of lower speed and laid back and emo-ish. I was trying to think of the verbiage. They've been more, ethereal, and so we're trying to get some more tracks that are more radio friendly coming up. Yeah.
That first track that we listened to, Electrify the Sky, definitely has a cool vibe to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really modern. They played it on the local radio here. A good buddy of mine, his name is English Nick. He knows everyone in the music scene here. So he played it on his local show. I think some of the newer tracks that you haven't heard, I think Sharks is great. Shark's Teeth, which you're going to play next, right?
Yeah, got that lined up.
Yes. Shark's Teeth is great. I took a trip down to South Georgia, and I met a guy at a bar near my hotel. I was on St. Mary's. I take an annual trip down to either Mary's or St. Simon's in South Georgia and take the ferry from St. Mary's to Cumberland Island. And that's my getaway. And that's where John F. K. Jr. Used to vacay, and Rockefellers had a mansion there. And the ruins are there, the ruins of the mansion. And you've got wild feral horses. It's great. So I'd go down there once a year to release. And my parents used to have a house there. And so I have a connection with St. Simon's and Cumberland Island more so. And I met a guy at a bar, and he said to me, we were sitting next to each other, he had a whole bag of shark's teeth. And he said, do you want to buy a shark's tooth? I said, sure. You can make a necklace out of it. You can do this and that. And so he breaks out this bag, and he's got all kinds of shark's teeth. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll take a shark's tooth. And essentially, he spent his whole life, since he was a kid, down there catching shark's teeth and selling them for money. That was his whole existence. And that's what that song Shark's Teeth is about this guy who essentially spent his whole life catching shark's teeth and selling them, and had a close encounter with a shark once, and the story goes on. But I wrote the song about him because it seemed like he was kind of a bard. He kind of was like a homeless-ish character, and I felt like that was an homage to my trips in my childhood, spending them down there in South Georgia. This South Georgia Shark's Teeth track. But it's crazy because the track was written by Johnny Whiteside, who's been a big instrumental part of the band. we were trying to set up a Kickstarter to get the band going, to get some fundage for to release the last record on vinyl. And Johnny was instrumental in that, and he was instrumental in securing the rights to Caroline Gay's artwork on the last record. Now, that wasn't cheap. I'm paying for that. Believe me, it's not cheap. She's an international artist. I mean, I'm up for paying her, you know, some money next year. But you know, I thought the artwork was representative of the last record. See the colors, and that's a great album. You know, anybody who's heard it loves it. And Shark's Teeth is on there. So is Dolphin in the Snow, which is a track about, which we won't hear, but it's a track, Dolphin in the Snow is a track essentially about a guy who is a dolphin in the snow. You know, someone who is unique out there in the world and isn't appreciated for the uniqueness. More or less, he's made fun of. You know, it's funny because if you see the movie The Joker, the current Joker, you'll get really a sense of how our society alienates individuals, you know, who are not cut from the mold. So that's what that last record was kind of about. And it's crazy because that last record was really personal for me and the guys, Peter and Johnny and Chris. And when we're writing music and creating these records, you know, sometimes after one's finished, people need a break because it's so intense. I know some bands just sailor on and just keep going, and that's where the Bowie and the Beck references come from, is because the comparisons, because we take a lot of time to write these recordings, to write these albums. So, yeah, Shark's Teeth took a minute to write and record. But, you know, the quality is there. And part of the quality has been, for us the last 10 years, Chris Sampson. The quality of his recordings he's a guy that has been in the studio with B-52s and other larger artists. So he really knows how to navigate around the computer systems like Pro Tools and all that really well, you know. So what I'm paying for when I go into the studio with him is his experience and him being able to say, "Oh, you want that sound?" And he brings it to life immediately. "Oh, should we put a cowbell on that?" And he's like, all of a sudden, bam, it's right there. You know, he's got the cowbell, but not the cowbell, but, you know, metaphorically speaking. You know?
Right, whatever it happens to be or needs in that moment.
I mean, if it needs something, and that's essentially what you're paying for is his skills, and he's a master. He is an absolute master, Chris Sampson. And Peter Norman, I met him years ago. He is my bandmate. Peter Norman, who we had on last time, is an absolute professional musician without being professional. So he has a day job, but he comes in and he can play like Mozart, like it's nothing. So, you know, you meet these people in your life, and there's a reason you meet them. And today for me was kind of, I had an epiphany that maybe all my friends having kids and babies is not, maybe what I'm here for essentially is the music and to give back that way. So, I mean, the greatest gift a man can ever give is the gift of life. I mean, really, hands down. And I'd love to meet a woman and be able to do that, but I've always had crazy, and I tell people, I've had crazy girlfriends, but they've always been super hot. But super hot comes with crazy. And so, it doesn't come with, let's talk about a family, let's go out to the bar and party. Party girls is what I've always had. And so, essentially, hopefully at some point in my life, I'll meet somebody that's ready, down to earth, instead of, all about the, pretentiousness. So anyway, Shark's Teeth, what you're about to hear, is a track about a guy that is down on his luck, and he's selling shark's teeth to make a living.
Very cool how artists are able to seize that inspiration wherever they might find it. And hopefully whoever that dude was that you met will hear this song at some point and realize that it was about him. And Peter, before we end the show with Shark's Teeth, I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking with you again, and thanks for coming
Always
on.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
With the new album, and happy holiday season ahead to you.
You too. Let's go ahead and meet up. Let's coordinate a time to meet up at Outback Steak or Longhorn Steakhouse.
Yeah, right on. Let's do it again, man.
All right, brother. Talk soon.
All right. Take care, my friend.
Take care,
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Been some great music by Spectralux, and we're going to hear one more as we fade out. This is Shark's Teeth. Have a great week ahead, everyone. All right, once again, that was Shark's Teeth by the band Spectralux, and just wanted to dive back on here at the end and mention that the guest vocals on that track, along with Peter Roets, were by Sammy Mitchelson. So I hope everyone enjoyed the show this evening. Going to be back on Wednesday, November 13th at 9 p.m. with Donna Snyder and Raquel Mejia. So I hope everyone tunes in for that as well. Selah.